Even in today's world, with its amazing array of modern technology and media, there is still a firm place for a good journal of record. Such is the case here with the English language newspaper, the Phnom Penh Post, in Khmer-speaking Cambodia, doing great things. Well, not only are newspapers always good to read for an easy access to information, they also tell you something about the vibrancy of the countries and even the cities, of course, that they exist in. This is the Phnom Penh Post, as you can see, and as it happens, the man in charge of getting it out every day, and it's printed most days, is Alan Parkhouse. Alan is the editor-in-chief of the Phnom Penh Post, but you've been around Thailand, not Cambodia.
I spent a lot longer in Thailand than I have in Cambodia, but I have to say I really enjoy Cambodia. I worked in Thailand at the Bangkok Post, at the Nation newspaper, and another one called Asia Times. So it's a 30-odd years experience in Thai newspapers, but I have to say the one I'm working on now I think is the best little newspaper in Southeast Asia. We've won a lot of international awards in the last 12 months, and we don't have any censorship here, which is the other big thing. I mean, there's not a lot of censorship in Thailand, apart from a couple of issues you can't talk about, a certain family. But here we have none of those issues whatsoever. We have a completely free press, and we have an award-winning newspaper.
How far back does the Phnom Penh Post go in history?
It goes back 20 years almost. At the end of this year it'll be 20 years old. We'll have a big celebration edition. It was started by an American guy called Michael Hayes, who started in the early days. It was a weekly paper. 2 years ago it was taken over by Australian publisher Ross Dunkley, who turned it into a 5-day-a-week newspaper, and he also launched the Khmer language edition, which is doing very well, up to about number 3 in the Khmer language press right now.
It's impressive to walk into your whole building structure here and find so many people working on this paper, and the Cambodian language one.
Yeah, we have more than 100 on the editorial staff, and I think about 400 all up, with if you take into advertising, marketing, circulation, printing, everything else. It's quite a big operation.
It is a big operation.
Cambodia, yeah.
Do you require most of them to be bilingual?
Not necessarily. We have a lot of translators, of course, who are bilingual, can translate from Khmer to English or the other way around. But we also have a lot of staff on the Khmer paper that don't speak English, which is not a problem at all.
Mm-hmm. I see that you nevertheless have minor issues with Cambodian English, like we have Thai English, urgently say, or things like that.
Oh yes, we have a lot of that in advertising, and I would say that the English in Cambodia is much more widely spoken than it is in Thailand, from my own personal experience.
I've already had that impression too, and I wonder why that would be.
Well, Cambodia basically had to start from scratch roughly 30 years ago, when the country was devastated from years of civil war, etc. And a lot of NGOs came in, a lot of non-government workers, a lot of people came in to do good stuff, and some of the great things they did was to educate, and it's still going on. And you'll find people in all areas of Cambodia, from tuk-tuk drivers to labourers, they all speak reasonably good English.
Yeah. Very impressive.
It is, and it makes life easy for someone like me who doesn't speak much Cambodian.
I see.
Well, this company itself is basically run by Australians. We have our publisher's Australian, I'm the editor-in-chief, I'm Australian, the managing editor's Australian, our major investors are Australian, all apart from one. But in Cambodia itself, I think the second biggest expat population is Australians after the French. The visa issue is a lot easier than Thailand, for example. Much easier to stay long-term here than it is in Thailand.
And Alan, it seems that expats, including the Australians, like something that's special about Cambodia and want to leave.
Well, it's a very special place. It's a place that's had to start from scratch, basically, 30 years ago. And when I went to Thailand 30 years ago, this is what Cambodia reminds me. And Thailand, of course, is a very very country, a very modern country these days. But this place reminds me of Thailand 30 years ago. Very friendly people, lovely people, good food, all the things you have in Thailand, but nowhere near the amount of population. But English is widely spoken. The place is progressing very rapidly, and I think in the right direction too, and that's why a lot of people stay here.
Phnom Penh itself, of course, has been through things virtually no other city has been through, because the Khmer Rouge emptied it, didn't they? And it's had to rebuild from that point.
Yeah, there was absolutely nobody here after when the Vietnamese invaded. There was no resistance, there was no fight for Phnom Penh because there was no one here to defend Phnom Penh.
And that had been part of their bizarre philosophy that anybody with a real job or an academic background probably should be returned to the fields. Isn't that how it went?
If they didn't kill them, they were out in the fields, yes. Anybody who was educated didn't last long with the Khmer Rouge. But yeah, Phnom Penh is amazing because the city was dirt roads and it was run down from years of being empty. And when you look at it today, in a very short period of time, it's a pretty vibrant, happening city, and there's building sites everywhere, there's cranes, there's high-rises going up. It's really developing quickly.
Yes, it clearly appeals to a lot of people. There are some excellent buildings in the area, but the ones in the classic style are quite attractive, aren't they? They're truly beautiful.
They're beautiful. The National Museum is something I'd recommend anybody go and see, and I'm not particularly a museum type person, but I highly recommend the museum in Phnom Penh. It was left untouched pretty well by the Khmer Rouge. There's some amazing stuff in there that dates well back before the Angkor period. It's really worth having a look at.
And of course, anyone who knows anything about Cambodia, and specifically Phnom Penh, is aware of a grizzly museum here, but probably something that should be seen or visited.
Oh, it's definitely a must-see. It's called Tol Slang, and it's otherwise known as S21. It's a former school, a former primary school. I happen to live right across the road from it. I rent across a house across the road, and I see people coming in and out every day, and it's quite telling. You see people pull up and they're smiling and happy when they walk in, but they've got a very different look on their face when they came out.
It's a depressing thing to see.
It's depressing to see, but it's worth seeing. It's worth seeing the atrocities that happen in there, because there's no way to describe in words until you actually go into that place and look. 14,000 people perished in that little school, which is an amazing number of people. I get the impression most people simply want to put the Khmer Rouge days behind them. They suffered terrible things happened to them in that period. Most of the Cambodians I talk to who lived through that period simply want to forget about it, and they want to just put it behind them and put it as part of the past.
There must be people though who are authorities on the full horror of it, and especially that museum you mentioned.
Yeah, there are. There's one gentleman in particular, Yuk Chang, who runs something called the Documentation Centre. And they're doing stuff like they're trying to gather the names of every single Cambodian killed by the Khmer Rouge, and they're documenting all sorts of things. They're doing reconciliation programs around the villages that used to be Khmer Rouge villages. They bring people into Tol Slang to show them what the Khmer Rouge did. It's very much a reconciliation type of thing Yuk does, but he's a very interesting character, and the work he does is amazing. It often features in our newspaper. He's a great source of information for our newspaper too.
It's a very worthwhile pursuit, isn't it, the newspaper business?
It can be indeed.
And you've got the presses rolling, what, 5 nights a week, is it?
5 nights a week. We've got 2 presses out near the airport. We don't print on Saturdays or Sundays, but we do a weekend edition that comes out on Fridays, along with the magazines and a few other extras in it, to give people a bit of a read over the weekend, and we try and make that edition a bit more featurey style, so that there are longer stories in it and things that people can sit back and read over the weekend.
So for the foreseeable future, if your many friends in Thailand want to see you, they better pop over here to Phnom Penh.
They better get over here, and there's no traffic jams here, and there's certainly no floods here at the moment.
So it's highly recommended.
Very highly recommended, and beer's about half the price of Bangkok.